Le Majar de la Colére. Hello, I am Carlos and I will to present to students. Merino Bata Maripaz, Pérez Santaella Kevin Gael, Reyes González Cristian Fabián, Sánchez Montes Carla Lucía, Serna Santiago Ernesto, Vázquez Hernández Yadira Saray, Villavicencio Reyes Carlos Alberto, and I, Ávila Gómez Carlos Perdón. The room was warm and clean. On the sideboard behind her, two tall glasses, soda water, whiskey, fresh ice cubes in the glasses. Mary Maloney was waiting for her husband to come home from work. Now and again she would glance up at the clock, but without anxiety, merely to place herself with the thought that each minute gone by made it nearer the time when he would come.
There was a slow slimming about her, and about everything she did. The drop of a head as she bent over her sewing was curiously tranquil. Her skin, for this was her 6 month windshield, had acquired a wonderful translucent quality. The mouth was soft, and the eyes, with their new placid look, seemed larger, darker than before. When the clock said 10 minutes to 5, she began to listen, and a few moments later, punctually as always, she heard the tires on the gravel outside, and the car door slamming, the footsteps passing the window, the key turning in the lock. She laid aside her sewing, stood up, and went forward to kiss him as he came in. "Hello, darling," she said. "Hello, darling," he answered. She took his coat and hung it in the closet. Then she walked over and made the drinks, a strangish one for him, a wet one for herself, and soon she was back again in her chair with the swinging, and he in the other opposite, holding the tall glass with both hands, rocking it so the ice cubes tinkled against the side. For her, this was always a blissful time of day. She knew he didn't want to speak much until the first drink was finished, and she, on her side, was content to sit quietly enjoying his company after the long hours alone in the house.
She loved to the luxury in the breast of the thisman, and to the feel almost as some brother feels to the sun. They were made grow to the came on the field given to the girl, went to the were a love tower. She loved him to the for way to the sat loosely in the chair, to the way I come to the door, more moving slowly across to the room with look strides. She loved inventing, for look is the ideas went to the tail straight in the hair, the funny shape on the mouth, and the special in the wire in the raining sling about to the tyrants. Stick still with the smell feel until the whiskey and the take some in their way. Tiring lightning? Yes, he said. I am tiring. And he spoken. He didn't usually think. He listened is the grass in the tiring in the one small another there was still of it, and the late half in the of left wasn't reading watching him, but she knew what he had done because she heard in the ice cubes firing back against the button in the empathy grass went to the he lowered his arm. He paused in a moment, leaning forward in the chair, then they get up and they went slowly over the fetch smell another. Owl, get it, she cried, jumping up. Sit down, he said when they came back. She notices that the new drink was dark amber white, the waiting of the whiskey in. Darling, Shall I your sleepers? No. She watching him Mr. began to steep the dark yellow drink, and the school deceived little oily skirts in the leaking because in the was too strong.
I think it's a shame, she said, that when a police gets to be as senior as you, they kept him walking about on his feet all that long. He didn't answer. She bent her head again and went and wished her sewing, but each time he lifted the drink to his lips, she heard the ice cubes clicking against the side of the glass. Darling, she said, would you like me to get you some cheese? I haven't made any supper because it's Thursday. No, he said, if you're too tired, eat all. She went on. It's still not too late. There's plenty of meat and soup in the freezer, and you can have it right here and not even move out of the chair. Her face waited on him for an answer. I smiled a little nod, but the mouth nothing. Anyway, she went on. It wet you some cheese and crackers first. I don't want it, he said. She moved uneasily in the chair. The large egg still watching his face. But you must eat. I'll feed it anyway, and then you can have it or not, as you like. She stood up and placed her sewing on the table by the lamp. Sit down, he said. Just for a minute, sit down. It wasn't till then that she began to get frightened. Go, he said. Sit down. She lowered herself back slowly into the chair, watching him all the time with those large, deliberate eyes.
He had finished the second drink and was staring down into the class. Frowning, listen, he said. I've got so many things to tell you. What is it, darling? What's the matter? He had now become absolutely motionless, and he kept his head down so that the light from the lamp beside him fell across the upper part of his face, leaving the chin and mouth in shadow. She noticed there was a little muscle moving near the corner of his left eye.
This is going to be a bit of a shock to you. I'm afraid.
She said,
But I'll be talk about it a good deal, and I'll be deceived. The only thing to do is tell you right away. I hope you won't blame me too much.
and he told her it didn't take long, 4 or 5 minutes at most, and she savored style throughout it all, watching him with a kind of dazed horror as he went further and further away from her, with each word. So, there is, he added, and I know it's kind of a bad time to be telling you, but there simply wasn't any other way. Of course, I'll give you money and see you're looked after, but there needn't really be any fuss. I hope not anyway. It wouldn't be very good for my job. Her first instinct was not to believe any of it, to reject it all. It occurred to her that perhaps he hadn't even spoken, that she herself had imagined the whole thing.
Maybe if she went about her business and acted as though she hadn't been listening. Then later, when she sort of got out again, she didn't think none of it had ever happened. I went the super, she magnated to whisper.
and this time he didn't stop her. When she walked across the room, she couldn't feel her feet touching to the floor. She could feel anything at all, except a sick nausea and desire to vomit. Everything was automatic now done. The steps to the cellar, the light switch, the deep freeze, the hand inside the cabinet, taking hold of the first object it met. She lifted it out and looked at it. It was wrapped in paper. So she took off the paper and looked at it again. A leg of lamb arrived then. They would have lamb for supper. She carried it upstairs, holding the thin bone end of it with both her hands, and as she went through the living room, she saw him standing over by the window, with his back to her, and she stopped. "For God's sake," he said, hurrying her, but not turning round, "don't make supper for me. I'm going out." At that point Mary Maloney simply walked up, bending him, and without any pause she swung the big frozen leg of lamb high in the air and brought it down as hard as she could on the back of his head.
For God's sake, he said, hearing her, but not turning around. Don't make supper for me. I'm just going out. At that point, Mary Maloney simply walking up behind him, and without any pause, she swung the big frozen leg of lamb high in the air and broke it down as hard as she could on the back of his head. She came out slowly, feeling cold and surprised, and she stood for a while, blinking at the body, still holding the ridiculous piece of meat tied with both hands. Alright, she told herself, so I've been killing him. It was extraordinary. Now, how clear he might because all of a sudden she began thinking very fast. As the wife of a detective, she knew quite well what a penalty would be. That was fine. It made no difference to her. In fact, it would be relief. On the other hand, what about the child? What were the laws about murders with unborn children?
Did they kill the both mother and child, or did they wait until the 10th month? What did they do? Mary Maloney didn't know, and she certainly was prepared to take a chance. She carried the meat into the kitchen, placed it in a pan, turned the oven on high, and shoved it inside.
Then she washed her hands and ran upstairs to the bedroom. She sat down before the mirror to dye her hair, touched up her looks and face. She tried the sign, it came out rather peculiar. She tried again, wholesome. She said briefly, aloud. The voice sounded peculiar too. I want some potatoes, please, Sam. Yes, and I think a can of peas. Sam was a better. Both the smile and the voice were coming out trembling and self-conscious. After some attempts of a natural voice, and without fear, she gave up for a moment and thought about confessing everything to her husband. Good. How do you confess on of those things? After a breath, after the tension in the air, she made up her mind she was going to lie to him. It wasn't going to be just any lie. She would lie to a detective, to her husband. She would lie and she would do very